started off, I was born in New Jersey. My family moved to Ohio when I was in 6th grade, and I went to the Ohio State University and got a degree in natural resources. And before too long, I ended up in Colorado, which I love. And the first time I saw a grouse was at the Jackson Airport in Wyoming. They do this courtship display like you see up there, at least in the old days, right on the runway early in the morning before the planes got going. And they were so cool. I just thought they were an amazing bird. And then when this job came open in 2006, I thought, wow, I would just love to work with sage grouse because they're so beautiful. And they have such a neat display. And I was lucky I got the job. So I'll be telling you a little bit about the grouse. And what I wanted to do, well, I'm trying to think how I want to do this because I know your teacher's going to come back and give me your hands up. I'm going to go through my slides a little bit, and then we're going to come back to another activity after we have your handouts. So we'll come back to that one. So you might wonder why we should care about a bird. And I think there's a few reasons. One is, like I said, they're really beautiful. And they have such a cool display. And you'll get to see a video of that in just a little while. Another is they're considered an indicator species for the sagebrush ecosystem. And how many people have heard the term canary in a coal mine? Okay, does anyone know what it means? Yes, it's similar. So if you're a canary in a coal mine, what they did in the old days before they had fancy electronic devices, they would take canaries down in the coal mine, and if there's plenty of oxygen, the canaries are singing and they're happy, and if the oxygen levels go down, they're not going to be feeling so good, eventually they're going to stop singing, and eventually they might die. And the canary is small, so if you take just a little bit of carbon monoxide or something, and they'll die quickly. Whereas people are bigger, we can handle a little more toxins, we don't die as quickly. So if the canary stops singing or the canary dies, they knew, wow, it's time to get out of the coal mine, it is not safe anymore. So grouse are kind of like that. They're very sensitive to changes, problems, roads, people, power lines, things like that. So if there's problems with the sage grouse, that means there's problems with the whole entire sagebrush habitat. And it's going to start affecting other animals, and eventually, if there's enough problems with the world, it can start affecting us. And that just has a little bit of a web. If grouse die, then some of the animals that rely on them might not do so well. And like I said, if enough things go wrong in the natural world, it starts to affect people, just like if there's too much pollution, it affects us. So I think those are some of the reasons why we should care about the sage grouse. Okay, so now that everyone has your handouts, I want to do just a little activity, and we'll see how it goes. I haven't done this one before, but I've had someone do it with me, and I thought it was really cool. So you don't have to take any notes for this at all, so you can put down your pencils. And for this one, it really works best if you close your eyes. So what I want you to do is just kind of imagine you're in my place the first time you're going to go out to see grouse in San Miguel County, just south of Norwood near Miramani Reservoir. So close your eyes, and guess what? Your alarm goes off, and it's 3 in the morning, and it's buzzing. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to get up at 3 in the morning. But you really want to see the grouse, so you drag yourself out of bed, you put on long johns, you put on really warm socks, you put on lots of layers, and get dressed really warm. You go outside, someone's there to give you a ride, and you get outside and it's really, really cold. I mean, it's like you can feel the snot freezing in your nose. You're like, oh my gosh. And you get in the car, luckily the car is nice and warm, and you start driving out to just north of Miramani Reservoir, and the stars are incredible. Just so bright, it's really cool. You're driving down a bumpy dirt road, you see some elk and you have to slow down so the elk can go in front of you. You keep driving, you get to a gate at the state wildlife area, You get out and you open the gate. It's really cold out. You can smell the sagebrush. You drive through, close the gate. You drive down this road through the sagebrush, and it's still pretty dark out. You can just barely see, and you finally get to a spot. The truck stops, and you get outside, and you're just hit with that cold again, really cold. And the person you're with says, okay, look over this way, it's to the east, there's a grassy area, and start looking for white spots out there. And it's because the males, when they display, they have white chest feathers. And you hold some binoculars up to your eyes, and you're looking, and you don't see anything at first because it's still really pretty dark, but slowly it gets a little bit lighter, and your feet are starting to get really cold. But you see something white up there, and you look through the binoculars, and you see a grouse. And they look really cool. I mean, they're puffing their chest out, and they're making this funny, bubbly, kind of watery sound. And so you start counting them, and you count 20 of these male grouse. And you see some of them are kind of fighting with each other. And they're taking their wings and they're slapping each other with their wings, and they're fighting to try to get the best spot on that lek and to try to impress all the female sage grouse. And now you can open your eyes, and this is what you would see and what you hear. Maybe I'll see where people get the idea for the mohawk and they flip their feathers up. There's the female on the left, the male on the right. It looks funny, but it's really cool. I really like it. Especially when you see 20, 25 of them out there at one time all doing that. And historically, there would be hundreds of grouse on a lek all doing that kind of display, but now there just aren't as many as there used to be. So we'll go on. All right, another reason why people might want to care about the grouse is there's not very many left. Audubon Society ranked them as one of the 10 most endangered birds in North America. There's about 186 grouse, male, female chicks in San Miguel County left, and there's less than 5,000 left in the world. They only live in Colorado, like southwestern Colorado, southeastern Utah. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has proposed to list them as either a threatened or endangered species, but they won't come out with the final decision until theoretically May 12th. But they've postponed the decision a lot in the past. And then they can say, yes, we think it should be threatened, yes, we think it should be endangered, or no, we don't think it needs to be listed as threatened or endangered. And we just don't know yet which one they will say. So here you can see kind of what the population's been doing since 1996 anyway. Like I said, historically, probably 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you'd count hundreds of males on a lek. And you'd have maybe thousands of birds in, you know, a whole big population. But here's the population numbers. You can see the orange line on top is where we think the population should be at a minimum. We want to see at least that many birds to make sure they don't go extinct. So, you know, one year, 1997, it actually hit that minimum where we thought it should be. And then it's kind of gone up and down. We were really nervous, you know, after 2006 when it kept going down and down. Fortunately, it's come up a little bit in the last 2 years, but it's still not where we'd like to see it. And one thing that's kind of interesting to note, you'll see like around 2003, 2004, it was really low. Well, there was a pretty strong drought right around here, and a lot of the sagebrush died, so that could have affected, you know, grouse doing well, because they need to eat sagebrush, they use sagebrush to hide their nests under and to be protected, so if sagebrush is dying, then the grouse might be dying. And there are a few different kinds of grouse. Does anyone have a guess as to which one is the Gunnison sage grouse? Top left or top right? Top left, you're right. And I'll show you some of the things about it. There's the scientific name, Centrocircus minimus. They're 2/3 of the size of a greater sage grouse, so they're smaller. And they have longer phyloplumes, which are those feathers on the back of the head that they flipped up when they were doing their display. And there's also more white on the tail than the greater sage grouse. And what's kind of cool is, you know, decades ago, people thought there was only one kind of sage grouse in the whole western United States. And then, like in the 90s, there were some researchers studying the birds around Gunnison, and they said, you know, these ones look smaller than the ones like in Montana and Wyoming, and they have more white on the tail, and they sound a little different. So they started doing DNA studies and found there was a totally separate species. So this bird didn't even exist as having its own name until 2000, when they said, yes, the Gunnison sage grouse is separate from what they decided to call the greater sage grouse. Oh, and both sage grouse live in sagebrush. So the graders are larger, they have shorter phyloplumes and less white on the tail. And then I also threw in a dusky or blue grouse, because you'll see those around here in the forest. Has anyone seen a blue grouse? Okay. They're more kind of bluish gray, and what do you notice about the tail? Way in the back in the ball cap?
It's like a turkey tail more.
Yeah, it's more like a turkey tail. It's a complete fan. Anything else? Okay. As opposed to the spiky tail, like the grouse, Gunnison sage grouse. And the blue grouse you find more in forests than the sage grouse and sagebrush. As far as where the grouse live in Colorado, pretty much north of the Colorado River you have the greater sage grouse, and south you have the Gunnison. And there's several populations. Gunnison Basin, where most of the birds are, they have thousands there. It's just a tiny population on Poncha Pass. There's some up in the Grand Junction area, some near Crawford, of course, the San Miguel Basin, Dove Creek, and there's some in eastern Utah around Monticello. And I'll talk a little bit about some things that grouse and humans have in common. One is sometimes we come together when we're doing research, and it's really cool when you go out to try to catch grouse, to do things like put on radio collars. You tend to go out at night, and what we've done when I went out is you go out in a pickup truck, you're driving on 2 tracks through the sagebrush in the night, and there's someone in the back of the truck with a really strong spotlight, and you're shining it through the sagebrush, and you're looking for eye shine. Does anyone know what eye shine is? Okay?
It's the reflective quality of animals, like with deer. If you shine your headlights on them, they look at you and their eyes kind of light up.
Yeah, they seem to glow. Like, if you ever noticed with a cat, sometimes their eyes seem to glow, you know, or wildlife. Yeah. So the eye shine grouse, obviously they have small eyes, so you're looking for just little, and it's kind of blue-green. So you're looking for that, and then if you see it, you stop the truck, you turn off the headlights, you get your iPod out that has the speaker, and you have a really long net, like a huge butterfly net with a pole that's like, 12 feet long. And you have one person with the spotlight and one person with the net, and you turn on the iPod, some loud music like AC/DC, and you walk towards the grouse, and the person with the spotlight is shining the light in the bird's eyes, kind of waving it. And I think it kind of freaks them out, and they just freeze, like the deer in the headlights. And then the music is to cover the sound of your footsteps, because if they hear footsteps, they think a predator is trying to sneak up on them. So the music covers up the sound of your footsteps, and you get close enough, and you throw the net over the grouse, you put it in a bag, and you take it back to the truck, so you can put on a radio collar. And it's really cool to be able to hold a grouse in your hands. And they really don't like the radio collar too much at first, but once it's on, it doesn't seem to bother them too much. And then you can release them again, and you can find out where they go and what they do. And sometimes we actually transplant birds from Gunnison, where they have thousands, to the smaller populations to help build up those smaller populations and to get some genetic diversity. And it's interesting, one time the iPod battery died, and we thought we'd try it anyway, and we're walking towards the grouse, and they flew away. So they really do, fly away if they can hear your footsteps. I think sometimes the grouse look like people. Who knows who that is? Anybody? Famous English king who had a lot of wives.
George.
Nope.
Is it Richard III?
Nope. Good guess though. King Henry VIII. I think they look kind of similar. And when they're fighting, they take their feathers and they're hitting each other in the face. I think they look like the Three Stooges. And just like we have favorite places where we like to hang out, grouse have favorite hangouts. In the springtime, they hang out on leks, which are more grassy areas, and they come back to the same lek year after year and decade after decade. And they just always like to come back to the same place. Like maybe you like your favorite hangout, So if something happens to that lek, like you build an airport on it or put a reservoir on it, then that population could die out. That might be another place you'd like to hang out. So, as I mentioned, they keep coming back to the same lek, and they usually do their strutting or woodchip dance from mid-March to late May. So, if you went out to Miramani Reservoir this time of year and listened really carefully, you might be able to hear that sound or see some grouse. This slide is a little bit old, but it still shows you some populations. The red places are places where there were grouse in the past, but there aren't anymore. So they used to be in Ridgeway, they used to be in Nukla. The yellow places are places where the population's really been going down. So this is south in Natarita, Dry Creek Basin, Hamilton Basin are going down. Here's where we are. In the Miramani population has been pretty steady there. Same around Burley Reservoir, same around Beaver Mason, same around Hot Springs Mason, North Placerville.
I used to live up there.
Okay. Yeah, I used to live in Placerville.
Iron Spring Mesa, yeah.
Yeah.
It's odd that there's lakes everywhere that it's green at.
Well, it seems like they do better where there's more moisture. Further to the west, maybe it's a little drier, or in Dry Creek Basin where it's lower elevation and hotter, they're not doing as well.
Like if they're like that's when there was a drought and they were in Dry Creek Basin, wouldn't they not be able to survive there since it's so hot and there's not a whole lot of moisture?
Well, they're, even though they can do poorly if it's way too hot or way too dry, they're pretty amazing. They can take a wide temperature range from like below 0 to over 100, and they actually can get moisture from the vegetation they eat. They don't need, lakes to drink from. So they can survive to a certain point until it gets too bad. So kind of like people, male grouse like to catch the lady's eyes, and they will fight and dance to try to win the and the best looking or strongest male is the one who mates with most of the females. And then just like us, they have babies, and they have a special place where they like to have their nest. And you can see the arrow there that's pointing to a sage grouse nest. Can you see a grouse or a nest?
No.
No, and that's the point. They don't want predators to find them, so they'll nest where it's safe under the sagebrush, and there's a clutch of eggs, just like we keep our babies safe by putting them in a crib. And then their babies usually hatch from mid-May to July, and survival isn't that great. Only like 12 to 60% survive the first 56 days. So that would be maybe 1 in 8 chicks to 3 out of 5 chicks survive. So a lot of them don't survive. I couldn't find a picture of grouse doing this, but they will, keep the babies safe and warm under their wings, just like a chicken. and just like we try to keep our babies safe and warm. And then we both have different kinds of habitat. Grouse in the spring and summer, like wet areas. So sort of elk, you can see, they like the willows and the nice green vegetation because the chicks like to eat insects, and there's more insects where it's wetter. And in some cases, we actually have put in some solar panels to pump water up from underground and make some wet areas for the grouse and Dry Creek basins, so there will be the insects for the chicks. Just like we also create habitat for our kids, maybe playgrounds. And grouse only live about 1 to 1.5 years. That's because some of them die as chicks. They can live to be 4 to 5 years old in the wild. So they might be considered pretty old at 4 years old. And right here is a hen and a couple juveniles. So they're still with their mom, but they won't be for too long. Just like as you get older, you'll graduate and go on to other things. It's my daughter when she graduated from Ridgeway High School.
Yeah, I can tell from the,
What's that?
I can tell from the chin. Yeah, like the walls
Yeah,
and stuff.
right,
in
the
the
green. Oops. Let's see, I went the wrong way. Yep. And she's 21 and living in Woodland Park near Colorado Springs now. So sagebrush need different kinds of habitat. You might have some questions about this on your sheet. I forget what's on your sheet, but just be paying attention so you write down what you need. So in the springtime, when they're doing their courtship dance, they don't like a lot of sagebrush because they want to be able to see each other and have the females see them. So it might be more like on the left, you know, they do their courtship in a place where it's pretty grassy, only about 10% sagebrush. Then in the late spring, when they have the nests, they might only have about 15 to 38% sagebrush, and sagebrush that's, you know, maybe about that tall. And then in the winter, they like a little more sagebrush, you know, over 25% canopy cover. So at least a quarter of the area is covered with sagebrush, hopefully more. So they have protection from the wind and shelter. So that might be a biotic factor that grouse need to survive. They need to have living sagebrush, they need to have grasses and wildflowers, they need insects to eat. And as far as how much space a grouse needs, it kind of depends. So I'll just read this a little bit here. The home range for grouse males in 2001 without emergency grazing. So one grouse, male grouse 1, he had 3.3 square kilometers as his territory. Male grouse 2 had 5.6 and male grouse 4 had 1.3. But then in 2002, when there was a drought, they needed more space. So, you know, the one grouse now needed 7.6 square kilometers, another 6 kilometers, another 9.5. So maybe if the sagebrush is kind of dried up, they need to go around a bigger area to get enough good food. Okay, and then it also depends on if a female has chicks or not. So a hen with chicks might only go around a 3.5 square kilometer space or range. A hen without chicks might go over 12 kilometers because she can fly, you know, wherever she wants to. If a hen has chicks, at first they can't fly, so they have to walk everywhere. So that could be one of those differences. And different grouse, just some are more homebodies. I'm kind of a homebody. I like to stay around home a lot of the time. So these show some different grouse by color. So the yellow grouse, yellow dots are one grouse. The green dots are a second grouse. The blue dots are a third grouse. The pink dots are a fourth grouse. So you can see the one with the yellow dots is kind of a homebody. Same with the green dotted grouse. The grouse that has the blue radio collar moves around a little more, and then the grouse with the pink radio collar really gets around quite a bit. And that's Blue Mesa Reservoir, and the yellow is Gunnison. And what they're starting to do now, instead of just the old radio collars they put around the grouse's neck, they have these cool satellite backpack transmitters. And they kind of go around, they have some straps that go under the grouse's wing. And the little dark part on the top is a solar panel, and then there's a little antenna there. And so they put these on certain grouse so they can see where they are all different times of day. Because with radio collars, someone has to go out there with this, receiver to pick up the signal. And you don't have enough people to be going out every day, all day, out at midnight to see where the grouse are. You only do it every now and then. But with the satellite collars, you can get like 6 locations a day, and you can get a location at midnight. So I'm going to, hopefully if it works, show you a little movie of one grouse's movements over time from April 2010 to February 2011. So it's just one grouse who has one of these collars on. And it'll show kind of like yellow colored birds, and then if you see a dark colored bird, it's the same bird, but that's the midnight location. So we'll see if we can get this to work. I think it's going to work. Let me just take a minute. All right, so this is a grouse moving around over time, and every time you see the dark location, that's midnight. So you can see it's going pretty quick. And this is again near Gunnison, Colorado. You can see it's kind of staying on ridge tops a lot, and then it goes over into that valley every now and then. So this is June 2010. And that bird's staying in a pretty small area most of the time. Every now and then checks out some other spots for maybe a day or so. There's July 2010. Every now and then goes in that valley again. So this can provide a lot of information for scientists because they can correlate where the grouse is with like what the habitat's like, and they can say, oh, they like this kind of habitat, or they like ridges this time of year, valleys another time of year. They can see, oh, they like this kind of place in the morning, they like somewhere else at midnight.
Just curious what the distance is between, say, where you see the grouse a lot of the time on that ridge to that valley over there?
So on the bottom, this is 2,342 square feet, so about half a mile. So, if you kind of go like that, it's just going like maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. Not traveling all that far, really. So this is probably more one of those home-buddy grouse. Because now it's November. She's not very far from where she was, but she's looks like more lower in elevation in the valley. And that makes sense. In the winter, when it's cold and windy in Gunnison where it gets freezing, you don't want to be up on the ridge tops where that wind is just hitting you. You want to be where it's a little lower, maybe a little more out of the wind. So yeah, she's not going, more than like a mile. So this might be like that grouse with the yellow dots or the green dots that just didn't move all that far. And this can also help scientists see, like, are birds avoiding roads, or does a hen without chicks go near a road, but a hen with chicks avoids a road? So you can get a lot of good information about birds from these satellite collars. All right, and this stuff is probably on your sheet too, so you might need to take some notes, the kind of stuff grouse needs to survive. And Catherine, if you can let me know when we're getting close to...
Okay. I'll do that. Give you a 5-minute warning. Is that enough?
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. So food, they need sagebrush. They eat the leaves of sagebrush. They eat forbs. Anyone know what a forb is? Anybody? Wildflowers. So they will eat wildflowers, and then especially the chicks eat insects. And all these things can be affected by dryness and drought. So, one of the things with this unit is thinking about climate change. And most people think it's going to get warmer, which can make things drier. And they also think there's going to be more severe weather events, like more severe droughts, maybe at times even more severe rain. But there's a good chance we could see things, at least at times, warmer and drier. So you can think about how that might impact Jonas and sage grouse. They do need some water, but mainly just for the wet vegetation that they need for the insects for the chicks. They get most of their moisture they need from just eating leaves and stuff. Do you have a question?
Yeah, how does climate change hurt them? Like if the climate change really bad?
Well, can anyone think of a way climate change might hurt grouse? Can I agree?
You can get really dry and the water won't be there anymore.
Yeah, they might not have to water, and then you wouldn't have the insects that the chicks need to survive.
It might get too cold it might get too cold in the winter and they would like be able to survive in the storm.
Yeah, if we had more severe swings of hot and cold, you know, gotta say it gets pretty cold already now. If it got colder, maybe they might not survive.
If there was a drought, if there was underwater, it would kill off not all of it, but kill off most of it.
Right. Yeah, kind of like in that 2002 drought, a lot of the sagebrush died. And so if there's no sagebrush, there's no sagebrush leaves for them to eat, there's no sagebrush for them to hide their nests under, or less, and then you just can't support as many grouse, and some grouse die. Any other thoughts about how climate change could affect grouse? Okay, we'll talk about it a little bit more later. So they need shelter or safety, sagebrush and tall grasses, because the grasses help protect them from predators. And so I kind of mentioned this before, they can survive temperatures from, at least right now, as far as we know, about 40 degrees below zero to around 100, maybe even a little more. It gets as low as 40 below in Gunnison and at least 100 out in Dry Creek Basin. And they also need a lot of space. They prefer, you know, big expanses of sagebrush where you don't have trees in it, because hawks and eagles like to sit in trees and then they pick off the sage grouse. So they just need lots of sage. And the range of greater sage grouse, which is similar, can be anywhere from about 4 square kilometers to 615 square kilometers, because some grouse do kind of migrate from place to place. There's some that migrate from greater sage grouse, Alberta, Canada, into Montana. And here in our area, they'll move from, you know, around Miramonte Reservoir over to the Burley Reservoir area, and sometimes between some of the other mesas as well. They also need to stay safe and warm. Luckily, they tend to do pretty well in the winter because they have all those feathers, and sometimes they'll even dive into a snowbank, and the snow acts like a blanket, keeps them warm, keeps the wind out. I love this picture because shows a wolf, and this is a greater sage grouse. They can live with predators to a certain extent. You know, in this case, wolves don't tend to eat grouse that much. They mainly eat bigger stuff like deer and elk. But coyotes do eat grouse and a lot of other things. So they're just like us. They need to stay safe and warm as we do. So there's a lot of different threats to sage grouse.
What type of predators do they have?
Okay, I have a slide on that in just a minute, so we'll get to it.
Does wolves not include sage grasses and not
Probably, I mean, if a wolf is starving, if that wolf in the picture was starving, he would probably go for that grouse. But in general, it probably doesn't make as much sense for them to spend energy on such a small thing when they've got usually a whole pack to feed. They're pack hunters, so they go for big animals, so the whole pack can feast on a deer or an elk. Yeah. So there might be some stuff on this side of the sheets, threats to grouse. So one is poor range conditions on both public and private land, which can be caused by overgrazing. Now, grazing and grouse can go together if it's done right, but you know, earlier in the 1900s, people really overgrazed the land. There were no rules about, you know, how much you can graze. You know, on public land, everyone could put their cows or their sheep out on it, and they might just graze it to dirt back in the old days. So, to some extent, some of the places still haven't recovered from that. So if you overgraze the land, then there's not enough vegetation for the grouse and to protect them from predators. Another thing is, to some extent, we have more fires these days. Cheatgrass is a problem because if you overgraze an area, then you might get cheatgrass to come in, which is a non-native kind of grass. It's like a weed, and that can catch fire real easily. This has happened a lot in Nevada. They had a lot of cheatgrass, and then it catches fire, and it wipes out all the sagebrush. And other weeds are also bad for grouse because they can't necessarily eat the non-native weeds. That is what cheatgrass looks like, and it can just take over. Okay, some other threats are fragmentation of habitat, and here's an example. This is, I think in Wyoming, or else northwestern Colorado, oil and gas pads. If you get a lot of roads, a lot of oil and gas pads, it's bad for the grouse because they like those big open areas of sagebrush. Also, when you get a lot of roads and a lot of human activity, you tend to get more predators, and that's bad for the grouse. Another problem is genetic isolation. You don't have as many birds and the populations are further apart. You don't get as much diversity, and then if a disease comes in, maybe it wipes out a whole population. Grouse don't do quite as well next to roads, so if you have a lot of roads, that's not good. They can be hit by cars, and again, you tend to have more predators when you have roads.
How high can the grouse fly?
That's a good question. I don't know. They usually don't fly that high. I mean, when I've seen them flying, it might be low to the ground or maybe 20 feet up. They can probably fly higher, but I don't think, in general, they fly higher than they need to. If they're going longer distances, they probably prefer to go higher. I can try to find that out. I'll try to remember and let you know. So fires, because it kills the sagebrush, that's a threat. Power lines, because eagles and hawks like to sit on the power lines and then they can see the grouse better and pick them off. Increased human activity, because where there's humans, there's stuff like garbage, and that attracts coyotes and ravens and other predators. Diseases like West Nile virus. Poorly planned energy development like this is bad for grouse. Some recreational activities, like if people ride all over the sagebrush and don't stay on trails, that can kill it and cause erosion. And pesticides and herbicides can also be bad. And predation, that seems to be a problem, probably because there's more of some of their predators than there used to be. Ravens will eat grouse, bobcats, weasels, coyotes. Even house cats can eat chicks.
I did, dog, putty cat.
And dogs, because the chicks are real little, they're only about that big, so they can make a mouthful for a cat or a dog. Or sometimes cats and dogs, just them chasing an animal causes stress, and if the bird doesn't have enough fat supply, it kind of wears them out, it uses too much energy, and then they could die later from that stress.
I was wondering, how can a weasel eat grouse, because aren't they smaller than grouse?
Well, a weasel, the body might be about that long. They can eat a little chick or an egg. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Can't magpies eat eggs and eggs out of the eggs and crows?
Yeah, crows, magpies, ravens will eat the eggs. And hawks. Chicken hawks. And you can see there's a lot of things that like to eat grouse. They eat sagebrush, some wildflowers. Insects eat stuff like grass, and then sage-grouse chicks eat insects. And I'll talk a little bit about our working group. We've got a lot of different people who are parts of our working group. Landowners and ranchers, folks from Audubon Society, Parks and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, Nature Conservancy, universities, oil and gas companies, land trusts, and the Natural Resource Conservation Service are some of the folks who all get together to try to help the grouse and also make it work for people at the same time. That's why we have landowners and ranchers telling us, you know, what can work and what can't work for them. So one of the things this group tries to do is preserve habitat, either by buying habitat or maybe putting a conservation easement on it. Does anyone know what a conservation easement is? Okay.
Easement, so then like the deer and elk can move through there without you running them off.
It could be that. What it is, let's say you own 100 acres of land, and you only have a house on, and your building's on 5 acres. And you know you just want the land to stay the way it is. Maybe you graze some cows on the land. You don't want to ever develop it and have a bunch of houses on the land or a shopping center. So what you can do is maybe work with a group like ours or Colorado Parks and Wildlife and say, you know, I want to put a conservation easement on the 95 acres where I don't have my house. And so what you're doing is you're giving up your right to develop that property. And that's worth some money, because you know, if you sold the land or developed it, you could get some money. So a lot of times groups will give you money for those rights you're giving up. So maybe Parks and Wildlife will pay you to give up your right to develop that land. So it's cool for you because you get some money, and also you know your land is protected the way you want it to be. You can still graze your cows, but you know no one's ever going to develop it because conservation easements are usually forever. So if you sold your land, the next person couldn't develop those 95 acres. And the other nice thing is you get some tax benefits. So it can be a win-win situation for a lot of people. And it might be for deer and elk, or it could be for grouse, or sometimes just people put an easement on just so it stays as farming and ranching land. So it's a nice thing that can be good for everybody. So here's an example, New Beginnings Ranch, just north of Miramonte Reservoir. They put a conservation easement on their land, one for grouse in certain areas, and then also one for deer and elk along the migration corridor. Another thing we do is habitat improvement. So this is a picture out in Dry Creek Basin. And in some places, the sagebrush is actually too thick for the grouse. If it's super thick, you don't get as many tall grasses and wildflowers underneath, which grouse also need. So what we did, we mowed some strips through the sagebrush so we'd get more grasses and forbs in there, and we did seed with some native plant seed. And we did it in curvy shapes because if you did just straight lines, and there's a coyote here and there's a grouse there, the coyote can see the grouse and run and get the grouse. But if you do it like this, if there's a coyote here and there's a grouse here, you might not be able to see it because there's all this sagebrush in between.
They will smell it.
They might smell it, but the grouse can also, you know, hear it, maybe fly away if they need to. Alrighty. Some other types of things we do are other places where maybe there's not enough sagebrush, we plant sagebrush seedlings, and we have volunteers help do that. Another thing we've done is mark fences, because some people studied this in Idaho and found out a lot of grouse, greater sage-grouse in this case, were getting killed by flying into barbed wire fences. Because sometimes in certain light conditions it's really hard to see those wires. So a bunch of different groups came together to mark the fences. And we used Youth Conservation Corps folks, so it was people close to your age, like high school age, some folks from Norwood High School even. And we put these little vinyl markers on the fence, and then it's easier for the grouse to see. And this was on Iron Springs Mesa, the Baker Ranch, and some of his horses came over and wanted to see what we were doing, trying to help us out there. And this is also good for deer and elk, because sometimes deer and elk and other wildlife don't see the fences, and then they, you know, get injured or kill themselves, get caught in fences.
Walk right into it.
What?
Walk right into it.
Well, you know, like if something's chasing them, yeah, they might be running right into it too if they don't see it because the lighting is bad. Yeah, if something's vine quick enough and runs into it, it can either kill it outright or injure it enough and then they later die from the injuries. As I mentioned, sometimes we move birds from a place where there's a lot of birds to where there aren't as many, and there's some grouse in this box, and they got moved from Gunnison to Dry Creek Basin. Okay, some more about climate change, and I know this is something you guys are supposed to be thinking about. So in the Gunnison Basin, a group did a study of how they thought climate is going to affect different ecosystems and animals. And they found that Gunnison sage-grouse are going to be highly vulnerable to climate change. And it said sage-grouse require mesic, which is kind of not too dry, not a wetland habitat, for brood rearing, which means raising their little chicks. And those habitats are predicted to become less suitable for this critical life stage. And they also found out that lower elevation wet areas are highly vulnerable to climate change. So again, that's going to affect grouse because they have less of that brood rearing habitat. The habitat might be poorer quality as there's higher temperatures, and then those habitats shrink in size or disappear. So some scientists have seen that there's a really good chance Gunnison sage grouse and some of their habitats will be affected negatively by climate change. So as far as there's things everybody can do to help, one is, if you want to, you could even get involved in the working group. We have meetings every now and then, we try to put it in the paper, or if you wanted to help with a project like the fence marking, you know, it's pretty easy to do, it's nice to be outside. You can also get involved in other groups like Audubon or Sagebrush Sea or Forest Guardians. Another thing is to keep your pets in control if you're in grouse habitat, a nice big open sagebrush area like in one of the places I showed you. Because if your dog runs loose, maybe you could catch a grouse or at least, you know, scare one. And if enough dogs scare grouse all the time, it's hard on them, stressful for them, and it can affect their survival. Same with cats. If you lived where you knew there were grouse, it would be best to have some bells on your cats or keep it inside or close to the house. Be careful where you camp and recreate. Try to stay on trails, you know, designated campgrounds, and then you can also let other folks know what you know. And I always like to thank the different groups that are involved, that provide time and effort and money to everything we do. And if you want to contact me or check out our website, we've got a lot of information on our website, which is sanmiguelgrouse.org. But we have, I think, a little bit of time left, so let me see if you guys have any questions. Or if there's anything on your sheet I didn't answer. Go ahead.
So, like, when we were looking at the grouse, like the different types of grasses, the one that looked like a turkey, could you mistake that for a turkey and accidentally kill it?
I suppose you could, but blue grouse are smaller than a turkey. I mean, they're kind of this size, whereas a turkey is more this size. You do have to be careful. If you're hunting, it's supposed to be up to you to know the different animals and make sure you've got the right permit and you're hunting the right season. So if you kill the wrong bird, you could get fined for that because you're supposed to know. In the blue? Okay, think of it, just let me know. Okay?
Have you ever gotten to hug a bird?
I have. You know, it's very cool.
How do they feel? Like, are they really soft, or is it like...
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've got their flesh and all that, but the feathers are really soft and they're very light. You know, because birds have to be light so they can fly. So, and it's cool just to be able to look in its eye, you know, and really, you know, sense that aliveness, just that same aliveness that's in us.
Did you feel the first video again?
Yeah, sure. That one's kind of a quick one. And if you go online to YouTube or Vimeo, they have a lot of different grouse videos on venison and greater. So it's fun to just look at some of those.
Is the one on the right the male or the female?
This is the male, that's the female, and when the males are done strutting, they look a lot like the females. You know, they kind of seem to deflate.
So they're kind of like a pufferfish.
Yeah, it is kind of like a pufferfish, isn't it? Okay?
Well, I'm gonna add on to Austin's question. I was gonna tell you that the dusty or blue grouse are the totally different color than turkey.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can pretty much tell them apart from looking at them.
Yep. Yeah, they're that kind of blue-gray as far as turkeys are more tannish, brownish. Yeah.
You're holding the grouse, but are they part of the
Well, you know, I was holding a female and she was really quite calm. Of course, I was trying to be real calm too and send her good, peaceful lives. I've heard the males can be more, you know, wiggly and combative.
Is the blue grouse related to a turkey?
Well, I mean, they're all related on a certain bigger level. You know, they're all like chicken-like gallinaceous birds. But then turkeys are a different genus than blue grouse, which are a different genus than the sage grouse.
So we have 1 minute till the bell rings.
Okay.
Nobody said that your life distract the grouse.
Uh-huh.
Well, wouldn't that also distract them from predators as well? So, has there ever been an occasion where a predator comes and attacks it while you're trying to catch it?
I have never heard of that.
I think the
Maybe
better be
because
like,
the predators might be a little scared off by the people in the light. Oh, no. I think the most would be about 12, 7.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
All
there's
right.
one thing to quietly pack up, there's another thing to talk about your packing up. So you can pack up quietly. Did you guys write Lee's name on your sheet and write sage grouse on here?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have that done. Make sure your yellow paper's on top. And we're ready to clap for Lee to tell her thank you. Okay, so we would like to do our power clap. You guys ready? Get everything in your hand to do a power clap. Cheyenne's gonna lead. Everybody's gotta be ready. 1, 2, 3. Nice.
Okay, and if you want to see what grouse droppings look like on your way out, they look kind of like dried out small whitish Cheetos when they're old. And then I have some feathers too.
Grouse droppings is code for what?
Grouse.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure.
And we also call it scat.
Scat.
And I can show you the difference between a grouse feather, a sage grouse feather, and a blue grouse feather.